Bismillah walhamdulillah. Salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Wa ala alihi wa azwajihi wa dhurriyatihi wa ashabihi wa man wala. Wa ba'du falhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. We thank Allah once again, Azza wa Jalla, for blessing us to be able to come to His house and spend some time, to make sajda to Him and to prostrate before Him, to remember Him, to fulfill His command, and then to spend some time after the prayer in His remembrance. To be able to spend some time on a Friday night, mashallah, in a place that Allah loves, as the Prophet ﷺ mentions in a hadith, أَحَبُّ الْبِلَادِ إِلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى مَسَاجِدُهَا, that the most beloved places on the face of the earth are the masajid, are the houses of worship where Allah Ta'ala is remembered. وَأَبْغَضُ الْبِلَادِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَسْوَاقُهَا, and the most hated places to Allah are actually the marketplaces. And when you look at the two and you contrast the two, the places of the masajid, this is where Allah is being remembered, Allah is being worshipped, people are looking to each other with love, having good opinions of each other, inshallah, and there's a mutual faith there. You're not trying to cheat each other in the masjid, inshallah. When you go to the marketplace, the predominant mind is of the world. Everyone is preoccupied and overwhelmed with the glitz and glamour of the world. You might not even be going to purchase too many things, but your eyes are shopping, doing all this window shopping. And we're being enticed by things, and oftentimes we might even buy things we didn't intend on buying, but just the nature of the marketplace is that it's calling you to the things of the material world. And then on top of that, you actually have people who are cheating one another, who are stealing from one another, shoplifting, trying to overcharge each other. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, one of the wisdoms behind why, he mentions the most beloved places to Allah are the masajid, and the most hated places are actually the marketplaces. But nowadays, if you go to the mall on a Friday night also, you'll find that the parking lots are filled, whereas the masajid are empty. And we are just thankful to Allah that we can, from His grace, be among the people that spend some time in His remembrance in the most beloved place to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a hadith that I wanted to start off with and share right off the bat. And it's where the Prophet ﷺ, it was mentioned, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لكعب بن عجرة, that he said to the companion Ka'b ibn Ujra, may Allah be pleased with him, أعاذك الله من إمارة السفهاء, may Allah Ta'ala guard you and protect you from the leadership of idiots, from the leadership of fools. قال وما إمارة السفهاء, he then responded by asking that what is the leadership of fools? قال أمراء يكونون بعدي لا يهتدون بهدي ولا يستنون بسنتي, that they are going to be leaders that come after me, that they don't follow my guidance and they don't follow my sunnah. They don't follow the tradition which I established. فَمَنْ صَدَّقَهُمْ بِكَذِبِهِمْ وَأَعَانَهُمْ عَلَى ظُلْمِهِمْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ لَيْسُوا مِنِّي وَلَسْتُ مِنْهُ. So then he continues to say that whoever affirms the words that they speak and helps them in their tyranny and oppression, then I am not from them and they are not from me. وَلَا يَرِدُونَ عَلَيَّ حَوْضِي, and they will not come to my lake on the Day of Judgment. The pond and the lake of the Prophet ﷺ, which we know will be the meeting place of the believers. And this is one of the most frightening warnings that we can have, because we know the Prophet ﷺ was very merciful. He was very merciful and forgiving. And we always hear about how he was rahmatan lil alameen, that he was the mercy of all creation, and he most certainly was. So when he issues a warning like this, which is basically disowning a person, it's the equivalent of someone disowning another person, or a parent disowning their child, you know that it has to reach very high measures for that ever to happen. And he's essentially saying that I'm not from you, and I have nothing to do with you, you have nothing to do with me, and you will not come to my lake on the Day of Judgment, which will be the meeting place of the believers. and they'll drink from that lake, after which they will never experience thirst again. And then he continues to say, وَمَنْ لَمْ يُصَدِّقْهُمْ بِكَذِبِهِمْ وَلَمْ يُعِنْهُمْ عَلَى ظُلْمِهِمْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مِنِّي وَأَنَا مِنْهُمْ وَسَيَرِدُونَ عَلَيَّ حَوْضِي. And then he continues to say, and whoever does not affirm what they say, and he doesn't help them in their oppression and tyranny, then these are the people who I belong to them and they belong to me. And they will come to my lake on that day and drink from my lake and drink from my hand, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as it's mentioned in other hadith. And they will be the ones that will be with me. So it's essentially then saying how we will be with him is that a person has to remain steadfast against those trials which will come from leadership of fools. And that's what we see nowadays. Nowadays, whether you're in a Muslim land, non-Muslim land, it's very hard to find leadership of people who actually have values, who actually stand for something which is right, and aren't just assisting the people of oppression, the people who are committing the most flagrant acts of tyranny, that you don't even have to be a Muslim to acknowledge that it's wrong. You just have to open your eyes and look at what's happening. Some people are so blind to the truth nowadays that they don't even care to look at what's happening. They just want to believe whatever's being told, whatever lies they're being fed from the leadership and the powers that be. And because this is what my government is saying, I stand by them. And then they also help them in certain situations and advocate and speak for them. The Prophet ﷺ issues a very strong warning. I'm not from them, I have nothing to do with them. وَلَيْسُ مِنِّي, that they're not from me, وَلَسْتُ مِنْهُمْ, and I'm not from them. And they won't drink وَلَا يَرِدُونَ عَلَيَّ حَوْضِي, and they won't come to my lake. He continues to tell his companion, يَا كَعْبُ بْنُ عُجْرَةَ الصِّيَامُ جُنَّةٌ وَالصَّدَقَةُ تُطْفِئُ الْخَطِيئَةَ وَالصَّلَاةُ قُرْبَانٌ أَوْ قَالَ بُرْهَانٌ يَا كَعْبُ بْنُ عُجْرَةَ النَّاسُ غَادِيَانِ فَمُبْتَاعٌ نَفْسَهُ فَمُعْتِقُهَا وَبَائِعٌ نَفْسَهُ فَمُبِيقُهَا. And he continues to say in the hadith that, O Ka'ab ibn Ujra, fasting is a shield. He continues to then mention good deeds. Fasting is a shield. We spoke about this in Ramadan, mashallah, how fasting acts as a shield. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that through fasting, Allah Ta'ala mentions that you will acquire taqwa. And taqwa, in its linguistic meaning, is wiqaya. It's protection. So when you develop taqwa, then this is a shield against the muharramat-illah, the maharim-illah, the things, the prohibitions of Allah. And that's, we try to guard ourselves against the prohibitions of Allah in the same way we would guard ourselves against the fire. No one would want the fire, but for some reason we like to do haram. Whereas the hellfire of the world is the disobedience of Allah, because that is what leads to the fire in the hereafter. The hereafter is really just a manifestation of how you live your life. And then they take forms in the hereafter. So the hellfire, no one wants the hellfire. We would guard ourselves against this. We guard our families against this. The way we guard ourselves is through guarding ourselves against the haram. So he continues to then mention as-siyamu junnah, that fasting is a shield. And then he mentions also that وَالصَّدَقَةُ تُطْفِئُ الْخَطِيئَةَ, that charity will extinguish the sin. And this ties into what I was just saying. الصَّدَقَةُ تُطْفِئُ الْخَطِيئَةَ. What does that mean? تُطْفِئُ means to extinguish. So then the Prophet ﷺ is saying that it extinguishes a mistake. And what is kind of implied here is that mistakes and sins lead to the fire. Therefore, charity will extinguish the mistake or the sin, meaning it extinguishes the fire through forgiveness. That when you give charity, it's a source of forgiveness. وَالصَّلَاةُ قُرْبَانٌ وَقَالَ بُرْهَانٌ, and prayer itself is a source of nearness to Allah, or it will be an evidence and proof for you on the Day of Judgment, according to the variation of the hadith. And then the Prophet ﷺ continues to say that, O Ka'b ibn Ujra, people, الناس غاديان, people will spend their days in one of two ways. There are those who will purchase their nafs. There are those who will purchase their nafs, they will own it, and therefore they will set it free. فَمُعْتِقُهَا. And then there are those who will sell themselves. They will sell their nafs, meaning they will become enslaved to someone else and to something else. فَمُوبِقُهَا. And they will destroy it. And essentially what he's saying then, especially as it ties to the hadith about the umara and the sufaha, the leadership of fools, is that people will be compromised in those times. That times will become so difficult, you will have leadership that will put pressure on people to sell themselves, to compromise their values, and basically become a sellout. And what are they selling and what are they selling out? They're selling out their deen. They will sell their deen for comfort in this world, in order to have safety, apparent safety in this world. So they don't get blacklisted. So they don't end up on a particular list. So they don't get any trouble with their jobs or their universities or their schools or their society or their community. Because the pressure will reach that level. You have fools running the system. So then the Prophet ﷺ is saying then that there are people, and Nasul Ghadiyan will be one of two ways. They will be the ones who then purchase themselves, that I will never let go of the ownership of who I am. فَمُبْتَعُ نَفْسَهُ. They are the ones who purchase themselves because they already know I don't own it, that this belongs to Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُمْ بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. That Allah Ta'ala already says about the believer that Allah has purchased from the believers their selves and their wealth in exchange for paradise. It's already a done deal. So when you've already sold something, you can't then sell it again to someone else because we no longer own it. So then the people who, as mentioned here, they purchase it, so then they will set it free. And they will set themselves free rather. But then there will be those who sell it. They sell themselves, and then they will therefore destroy it. And then what will drive a person to sell it is their need to compromise and their need to maybe avail themselves or even their families from some hardship. But we know that ultimately we have to always prioritize our deen. This is what the whole concept of the discussion was tonight. That being uncompromising and staying in the path. Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us to be able to practice our deen. And many of us come from very difficult circumstances where we wouldn't imagine that we would ever be that person. And inshallah, we never will be. Well, we have kids growing up here. It's a very different mentality. We're raising families here. Very different mentality. A lot of them didn't have to go through the same trauma that we went through growing up, the same difficulties that we had to experience. They didn't have the same rugged upbringing to where they've seen very difficult circumstances and they're ready to shoulder a burden. They're ready to do things for our deen. We're ready to, for example, die for our deen. But we don't know what our kids will be like. We don't know what the next generation will be like. We don't know how comfortable they feel with their faith. These are the things that we become concerned about. As the believer, we learned this from our Prophet ﷺ, is of course concerned first and foremost with themselves, but they care about others. And then if you care about others, the ones you will care about the most is going to be first and foremost your family, the ones who you're responsible for. That we're responsible then for instilling into our families, into our children, into the next generation, this willingness to never compromise what it is that we believe. So yes, we want ease. We want things to be okay. We want things to be comfortable. We want things to be safe. But we have to prioritize the hereafter. If we do that, then we'll probably get the world too. That's just the nature of how it works. That's Allah's mercy. So for example, if we were given a choice, if a bargain was put in front of us, and we were given an offer that you have to sacrifice today you'll have everything you need tomorrow. Or you can have everything you want today, but it's going to come at the cost of tomorrow and everything thereafter. Then the choice becomes very clear. That's essentially what the dunya is. That's essentially what this world is. Allah Ta'ala, He refers to the hereafter as tomorrow. Right? That وَلْتَنْظُرُ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدْ. That fear Allah and let the soul look at what it has sent for tomorrow. And in that verse of the Quran, what Allah Ta'ala is referring to when He says tomorrow is what? The Day of Judgment. That's essentially the offer that's presented before us. You can sacrifice today, sacrifice your comforts today, and think about this for a moment. In real life, if we were actually given that offer, we work our whole life to have a comfortable life. We work hard every single day to make sure we have what we need. What if we were given an offer that you work hard today, sacrifice and give up whatever it is that you wanted today, and you'll have everything tomorrow and thereafter? That's an easy deal to be done of one day. Whereas the alternative is sacrifice. We'll give you everything today. You can have everything that you want today, but it comes at the expense of everything you'll have tomorrow and thereafter. Then it becomes a no-brainer. That's what this life is. And as believers, we have to be willing to prioritize one over the other. Now, I know that, mashallah, as Muslims, we like good bargains. We like to haggle. You go to the store, you go to the shop, and you ask for a discount, mashallah. We're the best hagglers, mashallah. So we might kind of think, why can't we just have both? We can have today and tomorrow. Allah is Kareem. Allah is generous. Allah is merciful. He can give us today and tomorrow, and He most certainly can. He most certainly can. But usually, in order to get both, it's going to come down what you're willing to give up and the choice that you would be willing to make if push came to shove. It's not that you have to have one or the other. But if push came to shove and you had to choose today or tomorrow, what would you choose? Only Allah Azza wa Jal really knows what we would do in those situations, number one. And unless those situations actually came to pass, in which case we would also know. But in those cases when we're not really faced with that, we have to hope to Allah and prepare ourselves to be willing to be those that would choose tomorrow. Because if we are willing to choose tomorrow, then Allah Ta'ala will promise you what you will get tomorrow, and you still may also get what you wanted today. That's Allah's mercy. But for those people who would choose today, they will most certainly lose what they can have tomorrow, and they still may not get what they wanted today. That's the nature of the world. Some people will actually compromise what it is in the hereafter, and they still won't get that life they're looking for in this world. وَذَلِكَ هُوَ الْخُسْرَانُ الْمُبِينُ. And Allah Ta'ala mentions that this is the greatest loss, because they sacrificed the hereafter and they still got nothing in this world. So the believer tries to keep things in perspective always and realizes the nature of this life. And there's another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he actually mentions that whoever loves their hereafter, man ahabba akhiratahu, whoever loves their afterlife, adarra bidunya, that it's going to hurt his material world. It's going to hurt his dunya a little bit. وَمَنْ أَحَبَّ دُنْيَاهُ أَدَرَّ بِآخِرَتِهِ. And at the same time, whoever loves their dunya, whoever loves their material world, it's going to cut into their hereafter. That's just the nature of it. So then what are you going to choose when you're faced with the two? So the Prophet ﷺ continues to advise. He says, فَآثِرُوا مَا يَبْقَى عَلَى مَا يَفْنَى. Choose that which has permanence over that which is temporary. That we have to always be willing to at least be those that will choose which is permanent over that which is temporary. If you choose again that which is permanent, you'll still end up getting what you need in the temporary life. But if you choose the temporary, you lose the permanent, and you still maybe don't get the temporary. This is the gist of the reminder today that we all need to hear. We're all at different levels, and we all have different circumstances in our personal life, but there will be things that overlap. And we see it now in the world. People are being forced to make choices where we don't have that choice anymore. When the choice is taken from us, sometimes in those moments it becomes too late. That Allah Ta'ala, He gives us a chance to make a choice before we're compelled to do something. And the people who have the most foresight will be willing to make the choice which will benefit them the most. And this requires patience. This requires patience, which can be very difficult. But I'll end with this last bit of advice. We do know that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions that patience, in the lengthier hadith, as-sabru diya, the patience is a light. Patience is a light for the believer. And it's interesting because there's different words for light in Arabic, like diya and nur. And the commentators of the hadith, they mention that diya naw'un min an-nur. It's a type of light. وَلَكِنْ فِيهِ نَوْعُ إِحْرَاقٍ. That there's, in diya, when diya is used, there's an element of heat in that light. Whereas nur, regular nur, is light without necessarily having any heat. And that's why Allah Ta'ala, وَجَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ ضِيَاءً وَالْقَمَرَ نُورًا. When He describes the sun, He describes it as a diya, because it has heat. And then He describes the moon as nur, because there's no heat with that light. Both give light, but one has an element of heat. And there's other meanings to that also, about the diya being a primary source, where nur is a reflection of light, and we look at the moon being the reflection of the light of the sun. But this is one understanding of the difference between these words. Now the Prophet ﷺ, he describes patience as being diya. It's being light. That it's a light that will help you in your darkest times. But it requires some discomfort. That a person has to dig within to be patient. And patience is doing the right thing in those moments when you don't want to. It's difficult. And that's what that kind of heat can represent, as opposed to coolness. So coolness usually represents ease and relaxation. And the Prophet ﷺ, for example, he mentions جُعِلَتْ قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَاةِ, that the coolness of my eyes was placed in prayer. And in another hadith it mentions وَصَلَاتُ nur, that prayer is nur. It's that light that you can get from Allah without that element of heat, where when you reach a particular station with Allah, that prayer becomes peaceful. It becomes joyful. And it becomes that nur, which is then accompanied with some type of heat. But patience is diya. It'll give you light in this world. It'll give you light in your darkest times. But it's going to have heat with it. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have to step on your nafs. We're going to have to step on the self and on our desires in order to do the right thing in those moments when we're tested with things. So may Allah Ta'ala again help us remain steadfast, to be uncompromised, first and foremost in our faith, and then secondarily in our practice. That we stay the course. That alhamdulillah, in these times when we have relative afiyah and relief to be able to practice, that we do what we're supposed to. Because these liberties have been taken from our brothers and our sisters in different parts of the world, and there's no saying that we might be next. There's no promise for anything. So we have to make sure that in these times we're doing what we're supposed to. That Allah Ta'ala keeps us steady, that He keeps us steadfast and consistent. And in those moments, if we're ever faced with it, that He makes us be people of patience. We ask for the patience when the hardship comes. We don't just ask for patience just because to ask for patience is to ask for hardship, and we don't ask for the hardship. But we do have to be ready if the hardship comes, and for that I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help us be ready if that ever comes, and to be people that are equipped with patience when we need it, and otherwise give us a state of afiyah and relief from any of those difficulties. And we ask this for our brothers and our sisters throughout the Ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask this for ourselves and for our families and our loved ones and our progeny until the last day. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على النبي الأمي وبارك وسلم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين يا رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خيرا.
So I have $20 in the 10 10 change.